What up, cuckolds? It's your boy, the Hater, and it's time for today's edition of Wrestler Review. That's right. We're making this a daily thing until the Hater can think of other things to do. Now, I've been a little negligent because I've had a lot of work to do, but I'm still doing a video a day. But I do want to make more videos, because I really enjoy making videos, and I'm going to make more 25 Reasons videos. So if you have any suggestions, this is the video to put the suggestions down on, right? Now, with all that being said, it's time for Wrestler Review. Today's subject matter is not Cookie Rhodes, it's not CM Punk, but it's probably the only other guy that can be considered to be mainstream in this company at this point, right? And when I say mainstream, to be honest, none of these three guys are mainstream, but they're these are the stars, right? And the person in question is none other than Drew McIntyre. All right, Drew McIntyre, he's been around for a long time, so as usual, we gotta hit you with that career retrospective, motherfucks. So, the relevant career of Drew McIntyre begins in WWE when he is debuted as the Chosen One, chosen by Vince McMahon to be the future of this company. Drew McIntyre is tall, good-looking, in great shape, and is Scottish. So, that does add something to his appeal because he's got an accent and it makes him unique, right? So he comes out, and for the first few years, in my opinion, this guy's boring. Now, he is a legitimate mid-carder, and the things that I just said make him stand out, right? So as a mid-carder, he's perfectly viable, right? As an intercontinental champion, Drew McIntyre is a perfectly good champion. Now, the problem with Drew McIntyre this time is, in my opinion, that his moveset was very lacking, right? He did the Future Shock DDT, which he still does to this day, but that's a really shitty finisher for someone as massive as Drew McIntyre. Someone like Drew McIntyre should be doing a power slam type move or something. He's a big dude, right? Now, back then, he wasn't that big because you had Batista and stuff, But nowadays, he should be just throwing these jobbers around. And nowadays, to be fair, he does, right? Nevertheless, this leads to nowhere. So I will give that run a 7 out of 10, right? I'll give it a 7 out of 10 because he was a solid, maybe an 8 out of 10 actually, because he was over too. He was getting there and he had a thing going for him. This entire Drew McIntyre situation with him just being this badass and being the chosen one. And it felt like he was going to be the next big thing, right? It felt like a big deal. It felt like this guy was just holding the Intercontinental title for a little bit before he became champion. Then, on top of this, obviously he was endorsed by Vince McMahon, and he had one of the greatest themes of all time, which went kind of like this. Out of time, dun, dun, so say goodbye. You know what I'm saying? Great theme. Great presentation, everything was good, right? But then that led to really nothing, and he was put in a tag team with Cookie Rhodes called the Chosen Ones, right? At this point, it was very evident that both these guys were going to get a push. But in the context of the Chosen Ones, Drew was the A side and Cody was definitely the B side. The tag team achieved absolutely nothing, and it was a complete waste of time for both men. Eventually, the tag team disbands, amicably. They didn't have, a feud, I don't think. And Cody Rhodes goes and does other shit. Meanwhile, Drew McIntyre just, at this point, his career takes a complete downturn, right? Now, I will say this. Drew McIntyre was a jobber for a long period of his career. But that's okay, because he was a jobber, and there's nothing wrong with being a jobber, because we need jobbers, right? He did the role of the jobber pretty well. 3MB was a great jobber faction. Here's how I know. When 3MB was around, I would always pick them as my opponents in 6-man tag team matches in WWE 2K or whatever the fuck it was called. SmackDown versus Raw, whatever, right? When the first game where the Shield was around, probably the most played match that I did during that game was 6-man elimination tag. The Shield versus 3MB, So 3MB served a purpose. And I cannot give this run a 0, right? Because they did memorable things. They had memorable moments, right? Including when they had Hornswoggle join them and shit. That was pretty great. So I will give it a solid 5, right? 3MB felt like at any point they could be converted to a serious Freebird style tag team. So I'll give him a 5. So 5 and 8 is the averages that we got. Then Drew McIntyre gets fired. And he goes and wrestles in TNA. Now, I'll be honest. I didn't see this. So I'm not going to grade it, right? But I do understand that he did have a group with Camacho and LA Knight. Both of whom are now in WWE, by the way. So there you have it. But Drew McIntyre over there, he started to become who he is now, right? So that's when he started doing the Claymore and shit like that, which, again, the Claymore, it's a more acceptable move for Drew McIntyre because it's like a big man throwing his body foot first in your face. So that makes sense. But once again, I would have loved to see like a power move, right? But the Claymore fits. It fits him well, right? And it's like he's just a big dude. So like, him kicking someone in the head just, obviously it would hurt more than fucking Axiom doing it, right? Like that's the problem with like a lot of these wrestlers. It's like you have these like regular sized dudes like Jey Uso, and it's like, he does like a super kick, and it's like you're a regular sized dude. Drew McIntyre jumps through the air and kicks you in the fucking head. In reality, like for example, if Drew McIntyre wanted to do like the Claymore, like for real, that could knock people out easily. You know what I mean? But obviously he doesn't. He doesn't like actually kick. He just like throws his leg out there and just does a slap, right? Nevertheless, so part of his identity was formed during his time in AEW. In TNA, right? He was Drew Galloway. Who cares, right? Then we have to talk about his NXT run separately, right? Drew McIntyre's NXT run was, in my opinion, probably the best NXT run of all time. Like, there's nobody that I've ever seen in NXT that I thought this person legitimizes NXT, right? In other words, once Drew McIntyre became the NXT champion, right? It felt like Drew McIntyre was now on par with the other world champions. You see what I'm saying? Like, it wouldn't be an upset if Drew McIntyre beat like Daniel Bryan or some shit like that, whoever the fuck was the champion on Raw or SmackDown, I don't remember, right? But the point is, he's like one of the biggest guys they have in the entire company. So him winning a match is not crazy. It makes perfect sense. And with all that being said, cuckwads, the truth is that Drew McIntyre did really well with that situation. Now, with all that being said, it's not over till it's over, right? During his NXT run, Drew McIntyre feuded with the likes of Adam Cole. And one of the worst segments of all time is when Adam Cole and like the Undisputed Era essentially attack Drew McIntyre. And it's very difficult for one man to beat three men. But if there ever was one man that could beat three men, it's Drew McIntyre beating Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, and Kyle O'Reilly. Like he would easily destroy them one by one. So it's not really that crazy to beat them 3-on-1, right? Oh, Kyle O'Reilly does jiu-jitsu. I don't care. I don't care if Kyle O'Reilly is a black belt in 10 things. There's no universe in which Kyle O'Reilly can beat up Drew McIntyre, right? It's another thing. I don't want to go on a rant here again, right? But a lot of people are like, technique wins, Chad Gable would beat Omos. No, he wouldn't. You know what I'm saying? And if you think that Chad Gable would beat Omos in real life, like you've never been in a fight and you've definitely never done combat sports, because there's a point where size controls. Size controls everything. It's the great equalizer, size and strength. And there's absolutely no way. So, this was just silly, but it was good. Then, to make matters even better, Drew McIntyre put over Andrade, right? That Andrade's career highlight is Drew McIntyre putting him over. And that led to nothing because Andrade sucks. Andrade's just a guy with like a silly haircut. He wears sunglasses and he comes out and he smiles in a suit. Like, this guy's like, it's almost inexcusable at this point that Andrade and a lot of these foreign wrestlers, even though they've been in the country like 10 years, he's married to Charlotte Flair, this guy still doesn't speak English. It's like, what the fuck are you doing with your free time? Like, if I lived in a country for 10 years, I'd be a fucking poet in that language. Andrade just comes out, he's like, I'm here again. And he talks like fucking Speedy Gonzalez. He has that same accent, that lazy accent. He's like, I'm here. And it's like a mix of Speedy Gonzalez and Antonio Banderas, And it's like he's going for the Antonio Banderas, but he sounds like Speedy Gonzalez because he has like a thick accent, doesn't know what the fuck he's saying. You know what I'm saying? He comes out there, he just like fixes his suit, does this like shitty body language, and I'm supposed to be impressed by this guy, right? It's like, why? Just push Angel Garza. He's the same thing, except he speaks English at least, So it's inexcusable, but he put Andrade over as well. Now that we moved off of that bullshit, Drew McIntyre definitely gets a 10 on his NXT run, right? Which we're going to weigh the same. The Jobber run, we give it a 5, so we got 10 plus 5 plus 8, right? That puts us at 23, motherfucks. And now we've got to talk about 2 other runs. Or 3 other runs we'll do it because it's a little bit different here. The Drew McIntyre, Dolph Ziggler, like him trying to be a main eventer run was mid. That one's going to get a 7, nothing special there, right? So, that one was just your typical, like fucking, mid-card jobber type run. There's nothing we can do about that, but, it is what it is. That gets a 7, right? Then we got to talk about the Drew McIntyre Royal Rumble run and beating Brock Lesnar. That run has to get a 10. When he eliminated Lesnar from the Royal Rumble, that was one of the greatest eliminations in Royal Rumble history, right? The fans went fucking nuts. So he gets a 10 for that, and including his title reign. Then now, he deserves another 10 for this feud that he's in, where he's carrying that fucking jobber CM Punk, right? For the feud is shit, but Drew McIntyre is good in this feud, right? And he's been doing a good job. But we can't give it a 10. We got to give it a 9 because it's not perfect, right? So that gives Drew McIntyre a raw score of 49, which we have to divide by 6 units. The hell just happened here? Cucks. What the fuck? There we go, 49. Which we divide by 6 units, which gives us an 8.1666. But as we all know in the hater channel, we round down to the nearest whole number, motherfucks. So for better or for worse, Drew McIntyre is getting a solid 8 out of 10. Cuckolds. Good for him. Good for Drew. This has been Wrestler Review.